Hello, David Ansari here from the Center for Risk Analysis. We focus on political and economic risk. And the issue this week that we'd like to focus on is that of South Africa's dire GDP performance. So the Q2 2020 data was released by Stats SA on Tuesday, and it shows a dramatic decline of 51% for Q2. That is a seasonally adjusted annualized figure. And I'm joined today by Mike Schüssler, who is an economist, well-known figure and commentator in the economic space. And Mike, welcome to the CRA channel.
Thank you very much, David.
Mike, could you just give us a detailed explanation of some of the headline figures here and what it means in terms of the health of the South African economy?
Well, when you have a decline of just over 16%, if you annualize that, with other words, as if that decline happened over a period of a year, you get to 51%. You've lost more than your half of your economic activity then. The reality is, however, we didn't, but it is still a very big, deep decline. And if we continued in this basis, there would be very little left of the South African economy. As it is, any economy that loses more than 10% of its value is really in deep, deep trouble. And we know that the second quarter isn't the only quarter that was negative. There were small negative quarters in the 3 quarters running up to that. So if I look at that on a year ago basis, I'm looking at a 17.1% decline over the last year. And to put that into context, you have to grow the economy from here with 19.8% or virtually 20% to get back to the previous level that you were before on the economy only. That doesn't include the per capita, which you would need to grow to include the new people in the economy. So this is a very, very steep decline. It takes us back to levels that we last saw in probably 2002 on a per capita basis. And that tells you how long it's going to take for us to get back on our feet, so to speak. And if we leave out agriculture, because agriculture is a very strange thing. Agriculture and forestry and fishing, it's always got the weather and it's got other things, and you need to eat. So it's never going to be the biggest faller because of a pandemic. It can be the biggest faller because of the weather. That went up with nearly 9%. And without that, the decline would have been, about 16.8% on the quarter and about 18.3%. And then you need to come back with the rest of the economy with well over 20%. So it just says to you that things are really, really tough out there. And I don't know if that's going to be so easy. The other factor that we can discuss is the sectors.
Yeah, Mike, I think I would like to delve a bit deeper into the sectoral impacts. Obviously, the economic lockdown has had a severe impact on tourism and hospitality, on services, and more broadly across the economy. And this was the hard lockdown in Q2, obviously. But what do you think were the main sectors that were impacted the most? What are some of the headwinds that they've been facing?
Well, I don't have to think. I can see it in the figures in the data. Both manufacturing and construction declined with a third, or just over a third, and just under a third, for mining and construction, and just under a third for manufacturing. And that tells you that that is a very deep decline. The other sector that was slightly positive is general government services. But here's the crutch of that. That has to be paid for by all these other sectors that have now declined. So, if we look at that, it's a really sharp decline in, let's call it the productive sectors outside of agriculture. It's been sectors that are not going to come back very easily. For example, is like trade and the hotel and accommodation business. That's down 26%. And we know that the international tourism isn't coming back. That's about 2.7% of our GDP. So that only starts recovering next year this time. So quite frankly, this is a major train smash for South Africa, because the other thing is that if government was still expecting a 7% decline in GDP, they will now know that they are mistaken, because it's very difficult to see South African GDP under 9 or 10, even 11 or 12%. And that takes our debt to GDP far higher. And if you think about it, it means that we cannot actually afford the other sector that grew, the government services sector. We cannot afford it because it is huge in relationship to the rest of us, and they have spent on it. And not they, we have spent on it. We need to now pull that sector back and allow the other sectors breathing space in their taxes and whatever else we have. I don't think people understand how deep this recession has been for the productive parts of the economy. But when I tell you 33%, that means you have to grow with 50% to get back to the levels you were before. And if you haven't done that in years, it's going to take a long time to get back.
So Mike, what are the prospects for the recovery of the South African economy, given what you've just outlined? And I think another major factor to consider would be that of Eskom. Is that going to be a hard ceiling on South Africa's recovery prospects?
Well, firstly, the good news. The good news is that the first part of the bounce was good. We know that the June and July numbers were good. We've got indication of the August numbers. The latest things I'm seeing for September looks like more people are coming back to work. So I think the third quarter is going to have a very good growth, probably 20% odd. So that first initial part is not going to be as negative as I said. But after that, it's going to become a struggle. And we already got load shedding now. Now, that, as you hinted at, produces another problem. And for every day that you delay that recovery a little bit, it adds 2-3 days to your recovery. So if the load shedding continues for 2 years, say, you can add 6 years to the recovery if you have to. And I'm talking about not stage 1 maybe, but stage of 4 or 5 sort of load shedding. And that's going to make it very difficult for South Africa to come back. But I hope that we can get the Eskom sorted. I hope we make the right decisions. We can buy electricity that parks itself here as a boat or a barge. There's different companies that do that. We can buy from the private sector that's already producing. And I think we have to do that now. We cannot wobble around about rules and what we want to do. There's no want to do anymore. There's have to do. And that's a very big difference. You can have all these dream castles, how your electricity is going to look, how your water supply is going to look. If you don't have it, you can't dream anymore. You've got to work at it. And maybe this is just maybe we've had the shock that we need. And I think government is going to come up with quite a lot of, let's put it this way, government is going to see quite a mess here. And I think it's going to strengthen the hands of the people that have been saying this lockdown is harsh, such as Mr. Mboweni, for example. And the other thing that it does say to us is that the worst part of this whole situation is that the unemployment rate in South Africa going into this crisis was already over 30%. We are going to end up with an official unemployment rate of around 40%. The broader unemployment rate around 50%. That is not something that any major economy has done. That is not something that happens in an economy that's not at war. In fact, 30% does not happen in an economy that is not at war. So this is really crunch time. The politics of South Africa are about to change dramatically because that force of this amount of people unemployed, the negative feedback that the economy is giving people's pockets, chances of a job, chances of income, chances of increases, all those are really going to hit home. And I think that is more than anything else what we're going to have to focus on the next while. And it's going to be the economics is going to lead this discussion a lot more than people think.
Thanks very much, Mike. Yeah, one of the phrases that we're fond of at the CRA is that economics is to politics as gravity is to jumping. And sooner or later, that economic reality is going to have an effect on the political system. And really, I think what you've done is underscored the importance and the urgency for structural reform, particularly to energy and the labor market, which are recommendations that we've been making quite forcefully at the CRA. Well, Mike, thanks very much for your time and your insights. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. Remember to subscribe to the CRA channel, and also check out the links below for our free 30-day trial to the CRA. That's it from me, David Ansara. Until tomorrow, take care.